everyone, and welcome to the next episode of Talking Acquisition. This is the high energy, informative, and slightly opinionated view on all things acquisition, procurement, and government contracting related. This is the place where the contracting and acquisition communities and our industry partners connect to talk, listen, and learn from each other. My name is William Randolph, and I'm your host. And I'd like to introduce my co-host, my colleague, my partner, and my dear friend, Soraya Carrera. Hello, Soraya. How you doing?
Wonderful. Will, how about you? How are you doing?
Doing great, doing great. Good to see you again. It's been a minute.
Yeah, it's been a while.
It's been a while, but we're back. We're back. We're back.
Remember I said, as good as we're ever going to be.
Absolutely. But I think we're back on an interesting topic, something that's near and dear to our hearts. So let's get our disclaimer out of the way, and then we'll get to it.
All right, here we go. So our podcast shares information and views on a variety of topics that impact the federal acquisition community. Our goal is to provide thought leadership and perspective, not to criticize, judge, or render political opinions, although we do have some. We provide this free service because we are former federal acquisition professionals and leaders. We believe that the creativity, innovation, and effectiveness of our community is unleashed when we share knowledge, information, and learning. We hope you enjoy our podcast, and we welcome the views and comments of our colleagues across the private and public sectors. So, Will, let's talk acquisition.
All right. So, Soraya, here's the topic, and I think it's so big we'll have to do it in pieces.
Okay.
But the first piece or the theme is acquisition workforce, okay? And acquisition workforce development. Holistically, we're gonna try to hit all. We're gonna try to hit right. We're gonna try to hit all the areas.
Okay, but that's a big topic. So can we start by talking about what we really mean by acquisition? Okay.
Please.
So I believe that what we really want to talk about when we talk about acquisition workforce, we know that acquisition, in its generic term, encompasses everything from planning, meaning budgeting and pulling together the requirement and what you think you need, to the process of purchasing and then putting a contract in place, managing it, and then disposing of the asset or discontinuing the service. So that's cradle to grave, acquisition.
Yeah.
What we're going to focus on is procurement and contracting, correct?
Yes, that's right.
That segment of the workforce that is in that procurement and contracting field. And I want to go one step further and be very clear, especially for our private sector partners. In government, when we say procurement and contracting, we're talking about that function that is resident within the Office of the Chief Acquisition Officer generally, and under the Senior Procurement Executive specifically.
Yeah.
And the Senior Procurement Executive is a position that's called out in statute, and it is a career executive that is responsible for the overarching oversight and management of procurement and contract management in government. So when we talk about procurement and contracting, we're using that definition, which is purchasing, like the supply side purchasing, as well as the contracting side of the business.
Yeah,
fair?
I love it. Right. I mean,
because if we try to talk acquisition, we're gonna be here for
long. Yeah, but that's a great framing, because I think that's where we may have some informed opinions in that area. Perhaps
just a few. And look, it doesn't mean that the other aspects of it we don't have informed opinions, because we certainly, like you and I both have been on the program side.
Yes.
And we're both certified program managers. I was certified level 3, and I actually managed programs, worked in the area for almost half of my career. So I certainly have some opinions about that and how the intersection of the two is extremely important. But for the purposes of our conversation, I think we got to kind of narrow it down, procurement and contract management, and then later on talk about all those other, later on in another segment, maybe we talk about all those occupations or all those positions that surround the procurement function that are vital to the successful execution of an acquisition program.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, agreed. My English is really good these days.
Yeah, we're knocking the rust off, but it's okay. It's okay. So, recruitment and hiring. In my mind, I always say hiring and recruitment, but it's like that's backwards. It's recruiting, in my opinion. It's recruiting and and then hiring. So let's
Yeah.
let's talk about that as our first installment into this diving into the foray into this foray. What do you think about recruitment and hiring from a standpoint of in our community, context of procurement? What are some thoughts you have on how it's done, how it should be done, and if there's any opportunities for elevation?
Okay. So I'm gonna give you the government's perspective, because I think the government has got to clean up the whole hiring process in general, right? I think the experience for the I call it the user experience, or the experience of the recruit in government, is not always pleasurable.
Yeah.
It's not always inviting. It's too long, it's too slow, it's too cumbersome. First, you gotta answer, you gotta respond to the job announcement. You gotta use sometimes automated systems that are not the most flexible or easiest to use. At least that was my experience. And then you go through these interview processes, and the whole process just takes way too long. You want me, hire me, right? Let's not mess around. I used to tell my staff all the time, bring me the top 2 to 3 recruits, because I'm not interviewing more than 3.
Right. Yeah.
Because I'm going for cream of the crop, not cream of the crap. Just to be clear.
Yeah.
So top 3. And unless you tell me all top 3 are like ranked number 1, we can pick any one of them. That's the only way you're going to even bring me 4 or 5. Okay. Because to me, it was ridiculous. You're never going to go that deep down the list. So I think our recruiting processes have got to get improved in the federal government. I do think that we overcomplicate our lives. You saw the explanation I just went through about acquisition versus procurement versus contracting, right?
Yeah.
I don't know that we're real clear on that in our recruitment announcements, that we're good at explaining what we're really looking for.
Yeah.
I think we focus too much on the function of contracting and not enough on the mission that it will serve. Catch what I just said, the mission it will serve. Because I never, in my 40 years plus in government, said, oh, I write contracts for a living. No, I enable mission delivery.
Yeah.
I'm the person that helps that program official get what those first responders, that warfighter, what they need to do their job. That's Absolutely. What we do. And I think that's the way we need to sell it. And then the final comment that I'll make before I turn it over to you is, we're not even good at getting schools to teach the stuff.
Yeah.
It's like painful. Go talk to a college kid about what contract, and they'd be like, their eyes roll in their heads, and they don't. Now, when they teach it, by the way, a lot of places, there are schools, of course, in the DC area, and
that are taking it on. Yeah,
that are taking it on. But when you go out, like outside of this, you know what they call it? Supply chain management. Mm-hmm. Procurement falls under that supply chain management umbrella. And that's fair, because procurement plays a vital role in supply chain management. I think we've learned that, more people know a lot more about supply chain management, understand
than they ever did.
More than they ever did before, and will continue to understand it by their own experiences. And procurement plays a vital role in that. I'm not saying that we don't, but it is a discipline unto itself. If you think about the contracting is a discipline unto themselves. That's why there are organizations like the National Contract Management Association. What's the other one? NIGP. There's a whole bunch of associations.
Right, at the state and local level, yeah.
The state and local level, correct. NASPO, the National Association of State Procurement Officers. There are organizations out there that have stood up for this discipline. That's how important it is.
Yeah. Agreed. I think from a recruitment perspective, there are 2 big points that I think should be made. And in my career, I try to do this. Number 1 is government service, just in general, elevating government service. There is one thing I hate about every 4 years when we select a president, when we go through the election cycle, is that the government employee becomes this political football. It's like, oh, is it too much? Is it not enough? There's always some agency.
Can I interrupt you and ask a question? Is it only every years? I thought we were political football every year.
It is, but in that conversation, so you're right. I think it's always a political football, but in that season, there's always some agency that needs to be disbanded or needs to be, terminated. There's we went through a long season where government service was denigrate, in my opinion, my personal opinion.
I agree.
So we have to swing that pendulum back. That's like there is some goodness, there's talent, there is energy, there is honor, there is commitment, there is
Not
patriotism.
some goodness, a lot.
A lot, yes, in government service. So number one is like government service. We got to be better storytellers about government service, in my opinion.
Agreed.
The second is then the culture of contracts and procurement. Being a storyteller of our culture. Like as you said, it is way more than just writing contracts. No one wants to hear the story of writing contracts. That's widget building. That's just a manifestation of all the things that we do. They get documented in a contract. But all the things, all the black arts that we do, that's the stuff we should be telling people about. I have met only one person in my entire career exposure in this community that grew up wanting to be a contracting officer. One. Mm-hmm. And it was because his dad was a contracting officer. He's like, I want to do what my dad does. But it's surprising to me is that contracts find people. Our community finds people. The people don't find it. It's like you get exposed. It's like, oh, this is pretty cool. Let's go over here and see what this is about.
You fall into it, right? You
fall into it. Thank you. Yeah, you fall into it. So I think we've got to do it while the falling into it. We see that results in some amazing contracting professionals and procurement professionals. Imagine if we were more intentional and deliberate about it.
Well, that's exactly my point. What if we could sell this profession?
Yeah.
What if we could go out and tell people what we learned, right? Think about all that you can do. I go back to, you said, there's some good in it, that I said there's a lot of good in it. Think about what we do for a moment. Forget Homeland Security and forget DoD. Those are obvious missions.
Yeah.
Security. Even IRS. Everybody thinks about the tax side. They run financial crimes.
Absolutely.
They're the people that go out and get these bad people that are
bad actors.
Bad things, right, in our economy. I mean, I could just go down the list. Agency for International Development, the State Department.
Amazing mission.
NASA. I mean, the list is endless of and there is so much good stuff. And here's the problem, and you're right. We become the political football, especially every 4 years, because it becomes about politics. But the reality is, we're not politicians.
No, that's right.
The politicians is what you're really reading about. It's not the day-to-day federal worker, generally speaking. And I'm not going to tell you there aren't bad apples. There are bad apples in every profession. And every profession, in every walk of life, wherever you go, you're going to find a couple of bad apples. But generally speaking, the government workers, in all my experience, 99% of them, I'm going to use that number, 99% of them are there to do the best job possible.
Agreed.
And they actually care about what they do. They're there because they want to be there. It's not just a job. Is there a small percentage out there that just, go through the motions? Of course there is.
Of course.
There is in every profession. But most of the people that I've stood by, that I had to work with, that I had the pleasure of working for, were true professionals that cared. And they wanted to do a great job. And they cared about the taxpayer. They actually cared about the people that were affected by the missions that we were serving.
Yeah.
I know that that's what got my juices flowing every single morning, knowing that I was going out there to do something that would enable those people that are in the front lines that help others. So our hiring and recruiting practices have to be better at selling what we do, especially on the contracting and procurement side. We got to tell the story. You're right. They're beautiful stories to tell. I remember a good friend of ours, a colleague of ours that joined us, tells the story of an agent who was shot 20 times in the morning, and he got home for dinner that night. Why? Because he was wearing the body armor that we buy.
Yeah.
That's not a compelling story. I don't know what is.
I don't know what is. Yeah, agreed.
Exactly. That's not a compelling story about what we do. I don't know what is.
Yeah.
When you think about FEMA, where do you think all those food products come from, and all that water, and all those tents, and all those beds, and all those tarps, and everything that they buy?
Yeah, insurance and all the stuff.
Insurance, everything.
Flood insurance, everything.
Where does that come from? Right? Yeah. They buy it. They buy it to provide. So the services are vital. They're necessary. And we know that we have to take care of our public, and we, the American people, do take care of one another, and we do that through our government. Our government does that quite well. Yeah. It does it quite well with our industry partners.
Agreed, agreed. So Soraya, on the point of recruiting, what do you think are some of the skill sets, if you had to break down the skill sets that the government should be looking for when they're going out recruiting? What are some skill sets based on your experiences? Living the career and then managing and leading the career. What are some of the skill sets you think contribute to an effective contract specialist?
So you know that my first one is going to be communications.
Okay.
I think a good contracting officer, a good contracting professional, whether they're a cost and price analyst, policy, procurement analyst, policy analyst, or they specialize in any other area of procurement, because we have specialty areas like contract administration, et cetera. They have to be good communicators, because they have to be able to engage with the program officials that they support, as well as engaging with their staff, their team members, their co-workers. So yep. I think communication, both orally and in writing, very strong communication skill. I would say also the ability to persuade, to negotiate.
I love that.
And that is a talent, okay? That ability to get people to see your perspective and to put yourself in other people's shoes, because I consider negotiation to be both those things.
Yeah.
Being able to communicate your perspective, but also being able to see the other person's perspective and find that common ground. I think that's extremely important. So collaboration. I mean, you know me, big on C's, communication, collaboration, a cooperative nature, and a willingness to engage with people, to cooperate, to work together. And then, of course, the talent. And what by the talent, I mean, you have to have some kind of skill either in analytics,
yeah,
or I like to say that business side of the house. And I know when we talk about certification training, you'll see that I have some certain strong opinions. But I do think you have to understand how business works. Economics, you have to understand economics, business. You have to understand the core principles of pricing. And I say core principles, you don't have to be in-depth in it, unless you're going to be a cost and price analyst, right?
Yeah.
Or unless you're going to be an auditor or something like that.
So but you can't fear the math. You can't fear the math.
You can't fear the math. Right.
Yeah.
And then I do think that you have to possess certain leadership qualities, which I just named: communications, collaboration, empathy. I think when you get into the more, what I'm going to call touchy-feely characteristics, you got to look for people that have empathy, because that's how you learn to negotiate, right? Because you understand the other person's perspective. Yeah. That's what empathy is all about. So you have to have some empathy. Certainly, you have to have a certain level of poise and self-confidence. I'll use that word. Yeah. Because people want to be comfortable talking to you. So you have to, project a good image of who you represent, whether you're representing industry, academia, government, doesn't matter, right? Self-confidence, or that confidence, as I like to say it. And I'm going to stop there, because I can go down like I have like a whole laundry list.
Yeah, I do too. You hit a couple of mine, but I've got three that I think are tangential, but I think maybe worthy of mentioning. One is the willingness to be convinced. Okay. From a standpoint of being, and you said it, he's like, how do you, your words were, how do you influence and be influenced? Okay. But the willingness to be convinced is that, like, the FAR is not a cookbook. Okay.
Be stubborn.
It's not a cookbook. It's really it's the paths, and it's the various paths. And the person that is willing to be convinced that you're not so stoic. Okay, you're not so rudimentary and structured in your thinking. So it's an ability to take pieces of information, synthesize them, and then come out with something brand new.
Exactly.
I think that's a skill. The second is, which goes along with that, is the creativity piece.
Yes. You took that was the word I was thinking of, creativity.
If one is very rigid and structured in their approach to thinking and analyzing, and we need those types, the engineering types, we need them to stick to the script. Okay. But I think in this business, in this line of business, there is indeed some creativity that is warranted for those, when I look at those that have been highly successful, it's not because they followed the script every time.
No. Oh no, because they were creative. But you got to have confidence to be creative.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Because you have to have that confidence to communicate what you're trying to do and why you're trying to be different.
Absolutely. And then the last is, I think it's a culmination of all the things that was or many of the things we just talked about. But I believe in you need to have the raw materials to be able to develop having command of the room.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. I just truly believe there is something
really
about the role. What is asked of us as contracting professionals is that we have to be able to have the confidence, you said it earlier, the confidence, the knowledge, the creativity, and the empathy. I think that's the equation. That's all the stuff that's in the stew that results in your ability to command the room. It's like, okay, I have an idea and I have a strategy and then being able to communicate it and then influence people to take the journey with you. So command of the room, in my opinion. And again, they don't have it at the beginning. Not everybody has it at the beginning. And I do some work with some interns, 1102 GS7s, brand spanking new, can't spell acquisition yet. But you look at them and it's like, oh, you've got what it takes. At some point, you're going to be able to command the room. As soon as you have a knowledge base, some experiences, and being able to hone your craft, you're going to be able to command the room. And I think that's something we should be able to look at.
When you say command the room, I say leading. You see the leadership in that.
Yeah.
You see certain leadership qualities. We all develop to become leaders. I didn't wake up one morning and, back when I was 18 and envisioned being the chief procurement officer at DHS, right? We didn't envision where we came to. We saw ourselves moving along a path. Right? And we're going to talk about that. But we never saw ourselves there. And we weren't born to be put in that job.
Correct.
But we were born with certain traits, qualities, and we were raised in such a way. And we learned experiences as we went to school and we experienced things that developed. But someone somewhere looked at us and said, certain leadership qualities. That's what we're talking about. You see it when you're talking to that person, when you're engaging with them. And here's the thing that I want to make sure that nobody ever forgets. Not everyone in the room has to be an A. I always, in the grading scale of A, B, C, D, F, because I'm old school, because now I don't think we give D's and F's. I don't know. That's great. I'm sorry. Don't opinion. Anyway, but in that scale, I used to always remind the team, not everyone can be an A. You're going to have B's, and you're going to probably get a few C's. Yeah. And they're not bad, because those are the people that remind A's that there's another way of looking at things. And C's can aspire to be B's and A's, right? So you want that mix of people, because usually C's are the people that meet that core minimum. Think about it. C is a passing grade. Or at least it used to be. I believe it still is, right? C is a passing grade. It means you meet that minimum, right? B is better than that minimum, and A means you're extraordinary, you're great, you're wonderful. Everybody can't be extraordinary, great, and wonderful, because they'll kill each other trying to right?
That's right.
To beat each other out, right? So you got to have those A, B's, and C's. And I always say, when you're looking at people and you're looking to hire, you're looking for certain capabilities, certain leadership qualities. And you don't always get them all. That's where your B's and C's come in, right? Yep. But you start looking for that A, which is that person that's probably going to aspire. And when I talk to interns, that's one of the first things that I think about. I think about, one of you will have that job that I had. You will be a senior.
You will be. Yeah.
And when you think of that way, then you're going to hire the right. The other thing I would say is how we interview is extremely important. Can't tell you how many times I sat in interviews where people wanted to ask a technical question. Like, you had to deal with a problem in part. Yeah, thank you. That's not the question.
Yeah.
The question is, what do you do when you have a program manager that is relentless about pursuing only going to this particular company?
Yeah, a suboptimized strategy.
Exactly, right? Or how do you handle when you have a vendor banging on your door telling you that they're not getting paid by their prime contract? Those are like real world problems.
Oh, agreed.
how do you process a change order? I don't know if the Part 32 is correct, but anyway, how do you process a change order? Who cares?
Yeah.
How do you deal with a contractor who is not performing to the level that you're looking for,
Yeah.
recognizing you just wrote the contract and you still need delivery of the product? What are you going to do? Hey, go terminate for default? Hey, you might. That might be an ultimate answer, but what are you going to do first?
What are you going to do? Right. Yeah. And
that's
the work. That's the work, Soraya.
But that's the work, right? And
that's the work.
First thing you say to me is, I'm going to send the show cause letter. I'm done. That ain't solving the problem. That's what you do after a whole bunch of other things that you're going to do. Try to get that performance. So try to understand what does it take to make it work. See, that's what people don't understand about contracting. A lot of times don't understand. It's not all these little things that the FAR says. It's all these common sense things that we have to do as human beings.
Absolutely. And that's why I love the craft. Whenever I get an opportunity to talk about it, I was like, it's the best job in government. This is, in my opinion.
It is. But this is, I think, what's wrong with our hiring and recruiting process, that we've tried to do too much cookie cutter. And I know that we're trying to get away from that. I've seen that. I know that at DHS, our Chico at the time was really good about trying to get away from that. Not that all her staff necessarily went along. I think our job announcements are too complex. I really do. I think you got, and now, of course, because you got links. So they link you to 1,500 things. I was trying to lateral in an SES.
Yeah.
And I had a qualified SES, former SES. They had gone back and taken a 15. Because, SESs do that. They bounce back.
Absolutely.
Right? So she'd taken a 15, but she'd been an SES for like 3 or 4 years, right? So I'm trying to lateral her in as an SES. But because she didn't submit a particular form, we had to re-announce the job. But you know why she didn't submit the form? Because it was buried in a link to the job announcement. I'm like, really?
Really? That's what we're doing these days?
Do this? We make it hard for people to work for us. And imagine that's somebody who worked in the system. Think of the people that don't work in the system. So the government has to find a way to make the recruitment and hiring process much simpler for all. They have to make it a little bit more commonsensical. I am all about supporting our veterans, supporting the disabled. I support all those special interests programs. I really do. I stood up a program to recruit our warriors coming back. Okay. I am fanatical about those things, but you have to hire the most qualified person, not the person that rose to the top because they get certain points because of their status. It has to be all of those things.
All of those things.
Yes, I want to go get myself a veteran that qualifies for this profession. I want to go get someone with a disability that qualifies for this profession, not the other way around. Let me go hire a veteran and hopefully I can make them qualify. That's not the way it should be. And I think that's part of what gets lost sometimes in the hiring and recruiting when you have HR folks kind of interpreting what you're supposed to do. Because I can't tell how many times I've heard that argument before.
Yeah, gotcha. So Sarai, you touched on something that I want to raise, and that is pattern matching, where we recruit for the expectation of success. It's like Ivy League schools or the top public, the top public schools as compared to the Strayer or the online school. I have seen little correlation between the talented contracting professionals and where they went to school. In terms of where we tier them out, where we look at them and we tier them out. It's like, oh, we know that these candidates, I have seen little correlation and even more when I see the first generation college student, that comes out of their family as the first generation college student that knows a little something about government. You just light the fuse and let them go.
Exactly.
They are off and running and do amazing things as compared to some other educational pattern matches. So I want to make sure I want to voice that because I'm a small school guy. So it's like,
small school girl that went to school late.
Yeah, there
I
we go.
graduated, when I graduated from my bachelor's degree, I was already at 15.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, because it took me like 20 plus years to get my degree. I just won't even get because I went
But
to school at night. I was working, right?
sure,
And then certain jobs required a lot of travel, and then life happens, you get married, and then you're taking care of grandparents. And I mean, life happens.
life
And
happens.
I tell that story, especially to women, but this is true for men as well, that sometimes life happens and you got to live that life,
You got to
do
live
what
that
you
life.
have
Yeah,
to do. I was working. I loved the job that I had, but it required a lot of travel, my first job. Then I got married, and then my grandparents got sick. So I kept delaying, but I was going to school little by little, little by little. And finally, I made a promise to myself that I got to do this thing, right?
sure.
And June 2002 is when I graduated from college, and I went to a small college that probably nobody's ever heard of. And it didn't matter. It was still an education. And
Yeah.
I agree with you. I do not correlate the school you went to with your level of talent. I correlate you to your level of
Yes.
the
Yes.
individual. And I
Yes.
will say this, I don't want to denigrate those who go to Ivy League schools.
Oh yeah, I'm not making that judgment. Yeah.
Great education. I'm not gonna knock it, but everybody can't afford that. And we can't just when you go to hire at those schools, you're probably gonna have to pay much higher prices because you're gonna be competing.
You're gonna be competing for other
Folks
right,
out
right.
there really think that that label makes you better
Yeah.
than everybody. I mean, there are people out there that really believe that. So I think it's important for us, especially in government, to be fair and equitable in how we recruit. And we need to be
Yeah.
getting to all those small colleges and universities and looking across our great
Yes.
country
Right.
for
Casting a
the
broad net.
cast that broad net and go to community colleges, go to those local colleges, go to those small schools, because there are a lot of folks who go to those because they have to,
Right.
necessity. Not
Right.
everybody can afford to go to
Absolutely.
college. And I don't care if somebody's paying your student loan or not. I won't get into that
Right.
conversation. But think about it. There were folks I paid all my student loans and I took student loans to go to school, and I'm sure you did too. But the point is, I could never have afforded to go to a Yale or Harvard. My
Yeah.
parents probably
I
even
used a GI Bill. I used a GI Bill coming out of the military.
yeah,
So
exactly. My
that was
husband did
that
the
was
same
my
thing, right?
plan.
Yeah. So I
Yeah.
think that is an extremely important thing. I'm glad you said that because it is true. By the way, I also don't correlate your capability to do a certain job just because you went to college. I'm proof of that. I got to a 15 very successfully.
Yeah.
I hadn't gone. I hadn't completed my degree. Let me not say I hadn't gone. I hadn't completed my degree. But there are people that I brought into the profession that had never gone to college. They
Yeah.
had just graduated high school. And I pulled them into kind of like a procurement assistant role. And then they got the bug. They went and got their 24 hours and started moving on up. And all of a sudden they went out and got a degree. Some said, I'm done. I'm
I'm
not
good. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So my point is not, I don't equate talent and knowledge and skill to having a degree. College teaches us, and here I go, I'm going to go wax poetic on you. College taught us how to think,
How
not,
to yeah.
well, let me not talk about now. They shouldn't be teaching you what to think, they're teaching you how to
Yeah.
think,
How to learn. I always say it
how
teaches you
to
how to
learn,
learn.
right? How to
Yeah.
research, how to
Yeah.
find, how to understand, how to bring in different information to form your opinions. That's what college really is teaching you. And I like to think that that's what I learned. When I joke around and I tell people now that I'm retired, I have time. When I hear a news story, I don't believe everything the media tells me. Come on, you got to be lunatic. Well, that's, they all have.
Yeah.
No, but I go do research.
Yeah. Agreed.
Right. And I go read
Agreed.
the story. Now I read, like I'm looking at the budget because they finally passed it. I'm looking at the budget to see what's in there because I'm reading about all this crazy pork they threw in there.
Oh.
And, it annoys me because I'm like a little old taxpayer, but that's another.
Another
But my
podcast.
point is,
Yeah.
you go do the homework.
Yep.
People need to do the homework. And that's what I believe college teaches you. And that's why I think it's important. Yeah, it's good for somebody to have gone to college, but if they didn't, that doesn't mean that they're not knowledgeable, experienced, or capable of
Yeah.
doing the job. And I
Yeah.
think we
Agreed.
do put too much emphasis sometimes on higher education. And we need to think about that because we are discouraging people who may not otherwise lean in. By the way, when I graduated from high school, I didn't want to go to college.
Mm,
I struggled. I went to college because my parents wanted me to go to college, but I struggled with it. You know why? Because to me, it was just an extension of high school.
gotcha.
That's what it felt like. An
Yeah,
extension. I was like, no, I want to go out here and work and make some money.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
because
So it's
I
so
was
funny,
out for the
Sarai.
lifestyle, right?
I enjoy talking to you because it's like I had a similar experience. I had a partial scholarship to go to college right out of right out of high school, and I was like, I don't want to do that. It was a local college, and I wanted to get as farthest out of my local community as I could at the time.
Exactly.
It's like the
It's
Navy
going,
would do that.
yeah. So I do think that that's important because I do think sometimes we've gone through a period. I think we're getting better about it now, but I think we did go through a period where higher education was emphasized so much that
Yeah,
we were forgetting those who didn't
the people
aspire.
behind the degrees.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Or we were forgetting those who didn't aspire to it or who couldn't afford to aspire to it. And I've always kept my eye open for those people because they're me.
yeah,
They're you,
agreed,
right? And look at
agreed.
where we are, right?
And
So
look where we are.
I
That's
think
right.
about that a lot. I really do, and I try to encourage people to think about that. I'll tell you one funny story. This truly happened, and it had nothing to do with procurement. We were recruiting for somebody in HR, okay, and I was sitting on the panel. They invited me to sit on a panel as a customer. And so we're looking at resumes and we were like culling the list of who we were going to interview. They had ranked the resumes and we we're looking to see who we we're going to interview. And there was one individual that everybody put at the top of the list. And I was the one person that said, absolutely not. And they were all like, why not? And I go, well, look at this person's resume. This person had over 100 courses listed on their resume. I said, this person hasn't worked. They've been going to school all
Mm,
the time.
yeah.
Why would you take
Why would
this
you do that? Yeah.
over,
Why would one do that? Right.
right? Why would you want to do? I don't think this person works for a living. I think this person takes a job and goes to training.
Yeah.
I want people that like do something, right? And they were all taken back that I had taken the time to actually like count.
Right.
Because that was when you used to do the bulky resume, the
Sure.
bulky
Oh yeah.
resume. Yeah.
Yeah.
100, maybe I'm exaggerating, it might have been 50 courses. But my point was in every single job, this person seemed to spend more time in training or detail assignments,
Wow.
never doing the
Interesting.
job they were hired to do. Why
Could
is
be a
that?
could have been a sign. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, Soraya, we're at that time.
Oh,
This has
wait.
been this has been a spirited conversation.
No, we
One
don't.
of one of three on the topic of the acquisition workforce. But this has been good. So recruitment and hiring. Let's leave with before we go, we want to leave with a nugget. You had a nugget for the community in this space?
Sure. So the first nugget for the community is we do need to do a better job of marketing. That job announcement should be marketing what we do, why we do it, how well we do it. You got to market. You gotta inspire people to want to be in the profession. That's number one. And then number two, know what you're looking for. Know what are those skill sets, what are those traits, those characteristics that you are looking for, and then look for them. And you're not going to find them on a written piece of paper. You're going to find them in the individual when you talk to them, whether you're talking to them on screen or in person or over the phone. You will hear it. If you ask the right questions, you will find those traits. But marketing is the first nugget. We've got to be good at marketing what we do.
Yeah, I love it. I think my nugget will be we have to be, it's similar to you, the storytelling of our culture, who we are and what we do and our mission role. I used to say when I was at ICE, I was director at ICE, and we were surrounded by 20,000 law enforcement officers on one side, one program office, another 7,500 law enforcement officers on the other side. And that's a law enforcement organization. That's an agency that is 100%. They know they are Leos. And I used to tell folks all the time that we carry a gun and a badge, just like the Leos. It just looks a little different.
That's
Okay,
really
it
good.
just looks a little different. So we have to be able to tell our story inside of the mission story for wherever you are, and everybody's got one. What are your stories? Some of the stories are easier to tell. Some of them, like at ICE, at times it was a little harder to tell.
Like the agent,
Yes,
like the
absolutely,
agent who gets
absolutely,
shot in the morning and can go home to dinner
yes.
because
But
we
there are
bought that vest.
but there are stories to tell. There are stories to tell, and we have to figure out how to tell those stories. All right.
Wonderful.
And with
Beautiful.
that,
All
another one in
right.
the books.
Another one in the
Good
books. It's
stuff.
wonderful to see you as always.
Absolutely great to see you. And we'll be back with two more topics on subtopics on the acquisition workforce.
Exactly.
All right. All the best to you.
To you too. Take
Okay.
care.
Be well. Bye bye.